မင်္ဂလာပါရှင်စစ်တပ်အာဏာသိမ်းပြီးနောက်ပိုင်းမှာ NLD အစိုးရရဲ့စီးပွားရေးအကြံပေးဩစတြေးလျစီးပွားရေးပညာရှင်မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်လည်းဖမ်းဆီးခံခဲ့ရပါတယ်မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်ဟာထောင်ထဲမှာရက်ပေါင်း650နေထိုင်ခဲ့ရတာဖြစ်ပြီးနေပြည်တော်မှာတစ်နှစ်ကြာတရားရင်ဆိုင်နေရခြင်းအတွင်းမှာဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်နဲ့တွေ့ဆုံခွင့်ရရှိခဲ့ရလည်းဖြစ်ပါတယ်လက်ရှိတော်လှန်ရေးပေါ်ကိုဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်ရဲ့အမြင်သဘောထားဟာဘယ်လိုရှိသလဲဒီမိုကရေစီအရေးအတွက်တိုက်ပွဲဝင်နေကြသူတွေကိုဘယ်လိုသတင်းစကားမျိုးတွေပါလိုက်သလဲမကြာခင်မှာထွက်ရှိမဲ့အကျဉ်းတောင်တွင်အတွေ့အကြုံတွေကိုပြန်လည်ရေးသားထားတဲ့သူ့စာအုပ်ကြောင့်စတာတွေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးမစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်နဲ့ရန်ကုန်ခေတ်သစ်ကဆက်သွယ်မြင်းမြန်းကြည့်ပါမယ်ရှင်။မင်္ဂလာပါမစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်ရှင်
Well, it's very nice to meet you.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ပထမဆုံးမေးချင်တဲ့မေးခွန်းကတော့ပေါ့နော်အာဏာမသိမ်းခင်ကအခြေအနေအကြောင်းကိုအရင်ဆုံးမေးချင်ပါတယ်ရှင်အာဏာမသိမ်းခင်ကဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်အနေနဲ့အာဏာသိမ်းမဲ့အခြေအနေနဲ့ပတ်သက်ပြီးကြိုတင်သိမြင်တာမျိုးမစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်နဲ့ပြောခဲ့ဖူးပါသလား
No, no, not really. The coup was very much a surprise to me. And I understand that she was worried that it might happen and that there was lots of talk, of course, at the time. But my knowledge was that there was no firm understanding that the coup would take place when it did. So I never had a direct conversation with her before the coup about the danger of a coup, except, as I say, that there were rumours and things like that. Later, when I saw her in the prison, of course, I got to talk to her at length about some of the things that were going on. But certainly for me, I never discussed it with her before the coup, and the coup was very much a surprise to me.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်ကဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်နဲ့တရက်ခွင်မှာတွေ့ဆုံခွင့်ရခဲ့တာဆိုတော့လမ်းပေါ်ဆန္ဒပြပွဲတွေကနေလက်နက်ကန်တော်လှန်ရေးကိုပြောင်းလဲသွားတဲ့လက်ရှိတော်လှန်ရေးအပေါ်ကိုသူဘလို့သဘောထားမှတ်ချက်ပေးပါသလဲရှင်ယူကရိန်းအရေးလိုတခြားနိုင်ငံတွေနဲ့ရှင်ပြီးမှတ်ချက်ပေးခဲ့တာရှိပါသလားရှင်
Yes, she sure did. And the main message that she wanted to get across was how proud she was of the people of Myanmar for standing up for democracy. She specifically made the point to me that even though democracy was very young in Myanmar, you know, the whole experience under her government had only been a few years, and yet she was really taken with the way in which people tried to defend democracy, that they asserted their rights to democracy and the freedoms that had been built up. So she was immensely proud and made a point of saying that she was especially proud of the young people. So we knew in the prison pretty much all the things that were going on. And including, as you mentioned, that international support wasn't as much as we would have liked. Of course, the news about Russia's invasion of Ukraine came late to us, but we had many conversations about that issue and about how there seemed to be much more attention on to Ukraine rather than Myanmar. Understanding, of course, that the people of Ukraine were suffering as well, and it was right and proper that attention went to that, but at the same time saying, well, hang on, the situation in Myanmar is as bad, and the world mustn't forget. So she was concerned of those two things: one, that she was incredibly proud of everyone and the way they were standing up for democracy, and then secondly, was indeed concerned that the international community did not seem to be supporting democracy in Myanmar as they were democracy in some other places.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဒီတော့ဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်ကမစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်ကနေတဆင့်နိုင်ငံတကာအတိုင်းအဝန်ကိုဘာများအမှားစကားပါလိုက်ပါသလဲရှင်
Oh, she sure did, which was to stick by Myanmar, and that the people in Myanmar were looking to the rest of the world to support them, and that, Myanmar's democracy was a young one, but they had made such achievements in a short space of time, and that this was something that the international community should support.
နိုင်ငံတော်အတိုင်ပင်ခံပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်ထောင်ကလွတ်မြောက်လာခဲ့ရင်ပေါ့နော်သူ့ရဲ့တော်လှန်ရေးအပေါ်သဘောထားကြောင့်ပြည်သူလူထုအနေနဲ့တွဲဆောင်ဆွေးနွေးလမ်းကြောင်းပေါ်ကိုရောက်လာမယ်လို့ယူဆပါသလားရှင့်
Yeah, well, so I think, Aung San Suu Kyi is very aware of the situation. She's obviously experienced so many things, and nothing takes her by surprise. The time I spent with her, which was a long time, because our trial went for over a year, and so I saw her all throughout that process. I liked and admired her before, but my liking and admiration just increased all the more. That under the most terrible situations, the most incredible pressure, she remained incredibly courageous and strong and smart and savvy. She spent all of her time not thinking about herself, but trying to keep the rest of us in good spirits and supporting us and all that. She was incredibly good in the court at being able to parry the ridiculous accusations being made by the prosecutors and all that. So, in other words, intellectually and in every other way, she has the capacity to do what's needed, in my view. So I guess the main thing is, to the extent that we can help that process of having a free and getting the country back on track.
မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်ကပေါ့နော်ဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်နဲ့တရားခွင်မှာတွေ့ခွင့်ရတယ်လို့ခဏခဏပြောတာလည်းတွေ့ရပါတယ်မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်ရဲ့စာအုပ်စွန်နဲ့မထုတ်ဝေခင်ကလေးကပေါ့နော်မြန်မာပြည်သူတွေကြားမှာအတော်လေးကိုရေပန်းစားနေပါဖြစ်ပါတယ်မကြခင်မှာပေါ့နော်နိုဝင်ဘာလ14ရက်နေ့မှာထုတ်ဝေမဲ့အဲ့ဒီစာအုပ်ထဲမှာဒေါအောင်ဆန်းစုကြည်နဲ့မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနယ်တို့ရဲ့ဘယ်သူမှမသိသေးတဲ့အကြောင်းတွေပါမယ်လို့လည်းထင်ပါတယ်ရှင်ဒီစာအုပ်အကြောင်းလေးမျှဝေပေးပါဦးပြည်တွင်းကစာဖတ်ပရိသတ်တွေအတွက်ဒီစာအုပ်ကိုမြန်မာဘာသာနဲ့ထုတ်ဝေပြန်ဆိုဖို့ပေါ့နော်ဘာသာပြန်ဆိုဖို့ကအစီအစဉ်ရှိပါသလားရှင့်
Yes, there absolutely is. I'm glad you asked that. And the main purpose of the book, I mean, there's a number of purposes I had to it, but the most important to me was probably number one, to pay tribute to my Burmese friends and colleagues, because they kept me alive, and they demonstrated again to me the incredible courage and compassion of the Burmese people. And so I really wanted to convey that because Myanmar is not in any way the military that rules over them. That they don't represent the country one iota. The true Burmese people who I ran into were, again, those people who in the prison had absolutely nothing at all. Their situation was much, much worse than mine, yet they kept me alive, they protected me, they fed me, they kept my spirits up. They were just a joy beyond belief to be around. And so I want to celebrate that and make sure that the world knows that, understands that, and gets the message that this is a country, this is a people that we need to help. So that was the first objective. The second one's very similar, which is to get Myanmar back on the radar. Because as we know, the world is experiencing a number of terrible things at the moment. And attention to the conflict in the Middle East and obviously Ukraine and Russia and so on has diverted a lot of thinking away from Myanmar, and yet the situation there is at least as bad. I only came across that statistic the other day that there have been 144 massacres, defined as killings of at least 10 people or more since the coup, and those sort of figures largely beyond some of the other conflicts, and yet, Myanmar just doesn't get the attention that other places get. So, so one of the really strong purposes of the book is to get it out there, do as much sort of media and other things as I can, and just get that conversation going. But also, as I mentioned, to pay tribute to the people of Myanmar, to tell the story of many of the people who I met, whose story otherwise is just being ignored. So that's the purpose. And getting it into Myanmar, that's really important to me too. I know that the SAC regime won't be happy about that, so I'm not sure. I can imagine that it's not exactly going to be openly on the shelves or anything. But yeah, we are trying to do things at the moment to make sure that it gets properly translated, and that we can have as wide a distribution as possible.
အခုလိုသိခွင့်ရတဲ့အတွက်ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်ရှင်ဆက်လက်မေးချင်တဲ့မိကွန်းကတော့ပေါ့နော်မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနဲ့ထောင်ကလွတ်မြောက်လာတဲ့ပြီးခဲ့တဲ့နှစ်နိုဝင်ဘာလကနေစတင်လို့မြန်မာနိုင်ငံရဲ့အခြေအနေအပေါ်ကိုဘယ်လိုမြင်ပါသလဲရှင်မျိုးတော်လည်းအပေါ်ရဲ့အမြင်ပေါ်သဘောထားကိုလည်းသိပြရစီရှင်
Yeah, so I mean the situation in Myanmar of course is terrible. And that's been created by the junta, by that SAC regime, as they call themselves. So the spirit of the people, again, as I observed earlier, is something to admire. So from that point of view, one can only stand back in awe at the courage and compassion and so on of the Burmese people for each other and for other people like me as well. So that's the sort of good side of this incredible resilience that shone through. But if one looks at the situation in the country, it's just terrible. I mean, the violence being inflicted is off the scale. It's out of all proportion to past military regimes. So, as we know, Myanmar already has had its share of very bad military regimes, but this one is far the worse, and it cares little for, what seems to be basic morality, but little for international opinion and so on as well. So yeah, so the country's in an awful state, and the lives of people in Myanmar are just terrible. We've got over 2 million people displaced, 20 million of people in the country in the most dire poverty that it's possible to imagine, and in desperate need for assistance. And of course, all that's juxtaposed against a situation before the coup where things have been dramatically improving, particularly on the economic front. So just to speak on that for the moment, so things are bad on the human rights front, the violence, the killings, the murders, the rapes, all the rest of it, all the rest of these terrible things. But on the economy side, things are equally as bad, and a situation where Myanmar's growth rates were accelerating. There were some very good plans in place for the post-COVID situation. The military tore all of those up. And the economy now, again, is probably worse than at any time, just about in the country's history. But probably above all, that promise, that idea that there was a better future, that's the thing that seems to have been extinguished just on that economic front. So, yeah, it's really sad to say, but I know I'm not alone in this, that just saying that the situation in the country at the moment is just really dreadful.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ဒါကတော့စီးပွားရေးပညာရှင်မစ္စတာရှောင်းတာနဲ့ဆက်သွယ်မြင်မြန်ထားတာပဲဖြစ်ပါတယ်အခုလိုကြည့်ရှုပေးရတဲ့အတွက်ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်ရှင်ကျမမြပါ